Hello, welcome to Veterinary Ramblings with me, the host, Julian Hoad. Now, I'm sorry if you're expecting Mike Brampton because he and I usually do our interviews together, but I'm afraid tonight I'm interviewing, so Mike is not going to get a chance to take over all the interviewing like he normally does.
Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Hoad.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings.
I've got Mike as a guest tonight. Now, Mike, how do I introduce you? Do I introduce you as the owner of Tim's Medical, the main innovator of pulse oximetry in the country, the author of the best-selling capnography book, an explorer, a powerboat driver, no, a rifleman, or a photographer? I don't know. How do I skier? No, definitely a cyclist. Now, how do I introduce you? Introduce yourself. Come on. Mike Brampton, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself, please. Who are you?
Well, you got me into driving powerboats, didn't you?
Well, yeah.
I hadn't even thought about it until you phoned me that day and said, let's go driving offshore powerboats. Let's go to the Solent in the middle of winter.
It felt like the middle of winter. It actually was the middle of winter.
Well, it was March.
Yes. But the reason I got you into powerboating is because I thought at last I might be better at something than you. So tell me now your job driving powerboats now.
My job driving powerboats. I drive powerboats as a part of a role that, thanks to you getting me the qualification, I've taken up more seriously in the last 6 months or so. So I drive powerboats. They're actually called Zodiacs, which are rigidly inflatable boats with a big, powerful outboard stuck on the back with a tiller control. And I stand at the back of my boat driving expectant tourists round ice floes looking for polar bears.
Yeah, round ice floes looking for polar bears. So about 4 minutes ago, you blamed me for taking you powerboating in the middle of winter.
Yes.
But no, tell me more about this driving a Zodiac around ice floes. That doesn't sound warm.
Yeah, sure. I've got myself a job as an Arctic guide and polar bear guard. So there are lots of assets or facets to that particular job. The primary one, of course, is keeping the guests safe.
Is it just for polar bears, or are there other things out there?
There's other things out there. I mean, there are icebergs out there. There are ice floes. Fog can come down moment's notice. So it's really just keeping people safe in the high Arctic whilst enjoying themselves. You know, we don't want guests falling through a snow bridge into freezing torrents of water or get flushed out into the Baltic Ocean. We don't want them falling off cliff.
They'd be classed as a bad thing, wouldn't they, really?
All of those things would be classed as bad things. I mean, the ultimate bad thing would be if we got caught out by a polar bear.
Yeah, so tell me about that. How far away are you from the bears?
One of the exams that I had to sit in order to enable to do this job are the IECO exams. These are that's sort of an association, an organisation that controls the way that people operate in extreme environments like the Arctic. So there's a different one for the Antarctic, but the one that I'm qualified in is IECO. There are guidelines, essentially, so that you don't act stupid, you don't disturb the wildlife, and you try and stay as safe as possible. So we're guided by that. Now, that will tell you that you're not supposed to approach a polar bear within several hundred meters. Sometimes that's not possible because the bear will approach you.
And I guess you can't just keep on running away because that attracts them, gets them running towards you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are various circumstances where a bear may come to you. The commonest is when the bear will approach if the ship is sitting quietly in sea ice and nobody's out from the boat. You're all maybe sitting in the canteen or in the bar or something like that. And the bear will find you and will come over and investigate what you are doing. Now, in that particular situation, the bear could close within 10 meters, but you are relatively safe so long as the bear can't get onto the boat. I've had several occasions where if I'm in a Zodiac, one of those outboard, our rigid inflatable boats, blow up boats, and he's on land because a bear can only jump about 10 meters. So as long as you stay outside of that range, if they've walked down to see what you're about and you're in reverse, you can safely pull the boat and anybody in the boat away. But the ideal scenario is that you won't get within 100 meters or so.
Right.
That's where the big lenses come in.
You got some pretty amazing lenses. You got some pretty amazing cameras generally, haven't you? What do you got you into photography? What made you start to take snaps?
Photography. I think my dad got me into photography when I was about 8 years old to keep me out of mischief. And I followed that through until the start of digital photography, university, young families, and all of that sort of stuff took me away from it. And then as digital photography got better, I started to dabble. And, like you, I've got a great interest in wildlife and animal welfare and all of those things that we've discussed over previous episodes with other guests. So for me, it's a natural evolution to take photographs of wildlife. I happen to enjoy large predators.
They're amazing creatures, aren't they? And amazing
Absolutely.
environments they're in as well. So
Yeah, very much so.
be drawn to the Arctic and enjoy it, even if you don't get to see any polar bears. But they're kind of the ideal take on.
It is a unique environment. It is largely unspoiled. And as a guide, one of the things it's very tempting to give somebody a running commentary on everything from how sea ice is formed to the shape of the glaciers, the color of the ice, to et cetera, et cetera. But very often what I will do if I'm leading a hike or we're in the Zodiac, I'll turn the motor off. I'll just let the Zodiac drift in the ice, perfectly safe. We might approach a glacier front where you get the glacier ice that will come off. You've got to stay away from it. You can't go too close because it's incredibly dangerous. Because when a glacier calves, it's not just the chunk of ice that falls down into the water. That sends out a big wave, shock wave of the ice going into the water, but it also shatters. So what you get is a shrapnel effect. So you get shards of ice will fly across the face of the water, and they'll go 100 meters or more. And what you also get are larger chunks of ice that will break off, and they're like mortars or grenades that fly up into the air and then splatter down equally at about 200 meters. You just don't want to be anywhere near that. But what I'll often do is I'll just turn the engine off, or I'll stop talking or stop everybody from talking and just listen. Because we talk about the silence of the Arctic, but it's not silent. It sort of, how can I describe it? It calls to you. It talks. The melting ice from a glacier will pop. It pops and hisses as bubbles of air that were compressed thousands of years ago finally break free, and it pops. And it's perfect to pick. What's a good thing to do? Great fun to do is to pick up a piece of glacier ice from the sea. It's quite a sweet taste. It's not salty at all. And take that back to the ship. And then what you do is you break that up into chunks, great big chunks, and you pop that in your whiskey in the evening, or your rum, or your gin, and it hisses and pops in your glass as you're drinking it.
Drinking ice that's several thousand years old, or
Absolutely.
several hundred thousand years old, depending on
absolutely. Laid down by snowfall and compressed and compressed and compressed, and then it's worked its way down the mountain. So so often I'll switch the engines off or shut up and just let people listen and take in the atmosphere because it talks to you.
And is it that talking? Is it that voice of the Arctic that makes you want to go back and back and back?
I think it probably is. It's some ice sirens tucked away under the ice, beckoning unwary sailors and explorers to come and talk to me.
Come see here, Mike. Come see here.
Yeah, it's a unique environment, and it's fascinating, and you spend a lot of time marveling at the adventures of people that have passed before you.
Mm.
I've got Gore-Tex gear, I've got down, I've got all of the latest equipment to keep me warm and dry and safe. And you think of the Shackletons and the Amundsons and the Scots
Yeah.
and the equipment that they were using, and yet they're in the same environment. You know, they got wet, they got frozen.
Yeah. Because when something is wet, so this is Gore-Tex, when clothes get wet, they stay wet in that environment, don't they?
And as you know from your own mountaineering experience,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
top of a mountain, it's cold. And
Nothing less pleasant than cold and wet.
Absolutely. Well, until it freezes.
Until it freezes, yeah. Then it's fine.
Then it's even worse.
So, and you said to me before about the feeling of real privilege of being there.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that you do look upon it as a real privilege, don't you? As an honour to be allowed there, to be allowed back, and to be allowed to be in that position of being a guide.
The feeling of privilege is multifaceted, because it's a privilege to be there, whether as a photographer, whether as a tourist, whether as somebody on a cruise. It's a privilege to be able to go to these places.
Mm.
The privilege also is manifest in the fact that to be going back again and again, and now going back as a person ultimately responsible for the safety of visitors to the area, that's a real privilege, because I'm a guy from Birmingham. I'm not a youngster.
Born about as far from the sea as they get.
Yeah. I mean, until probably just before COVID, I wouldn't have even imagined getting on board some of the little ships that I've now been on. These are small converted exploration boats or fishing boats, and converted for exploration. So they've got berths, showers, some have even got a little sauna. But they are small ships. And it wasn't until the first one that I went on, which was about 6 or 7 years ago now, and we sailed out from Longyearbyen, the main harbour, and we got hit by a squall. And I'm privileged. I was lucky. I was the only guest who wasn't sick. And I found it quite exciting going up on the bridge and watching the waves break against the bow, and the water flowing up right over the top of the ship as we pitched up and down in this environment. It was incredible. I loved it. But I had no idea. You see these videos on YouTube of small ships or big ships in big seas, and very often it turns your stomach. And I had no idea that I would find it such a thrill.
So, did you find it frightening at all?
There's the odd tip of the boat, or yaw, or roll, and you sort of think, "Oh my God, that was a big roll. We're going to roll over." And you settle down again soon afterwards, and you realise that it's not going to be too bad, and you turn and bow into the waves again, and you carry on. It's not always like that, though.
No?
Yeah, no, it's not always like that. The sea ice has been described as the devil's dance floor. Until you actually see it or experience it, it's difficult to describe, because if you can imagine looking across a seascape and you'll see the swell and you'll see the waves, it's exactly the same as that, but it's covered with ice. But the ice moves, and it's like the devil's dance floor. But the only creature that's not affected by that is the polar bear. And they seem to be able to walk across that like it's a billiard table. You and I would just fall over, but they just...
Is that because they're so heavy that they're steady as the ice, or?
I think it's because they've got their sea legs, and they've got 4 of them, and we've only got 2. Well, as a quadruped, they're far better equipped to do that. And they've got big paws. Polar bears have got massive paws. Yeah, absolutely. So that spreads the load as they walk across the ice. And it's their environment, it's their home. It'd be like you going into the kitchen and getting a beer. A polar bear will walk across sea ice, and it's not always rough. Sometimes it is absolutely mirror flat.
I've seen some of your pictures, and I have to say they are always amazing. But I've seen some of your pictures where there's a true mirror effect, and you get
Absolutely.
the mountains above and the mountains reflected, and it looks like there's no movement in the sea at all.
No, absolutely not. There's not a ripple. Nothing is disturbing that, unless you get a skewer or a fulmar dip its wingtip in as it flies past you. But yeah, it's absolutely incredible. That flat calm very often is accompanied by the most spectacular light.
Isn't it?
So all I do is capture it in the camera. All I'm doing is pressing the shutter. It's there. Anybody could do it.
Well, I don't agree. I think that there is a difference between pointing a camera, using its settings to get a good image, and getting that image. And
Okay, well, I could help you
Real-
get that image.
you could, I'm sure you could. If I go to Svalbard with you at some stage, I could do that.
Yeah.
Well, is it different? It must be different going as a guide as opposed to going as a guest. What are the differences? Makes it feel different.
It feels to. I've got a lot of friends on Svalbard from going back from all the expeditions that I've been on, both by land and by sea. And it's this last year since I fully qualified and I got my seaman's ticket and I can get a job on any seagoing vessel now. But since I got that, and since I got the permission to carry permit from the governor, which enables me to carry a rifle, which now means that I can, in my own right, leave the environs of the town, because that's a legal requirement. You don't leave the environs of the town without a rifle. But I've got permission to carry now for polar bear guarding duties. The guys, I don't know. I don't think their attitude has significantly changed, although it's sort of been more of a welcome. And it's as if now you're one of us, if that makes
Yes.
sense. You've finally taken your exams. You've proven yourself. You've been up here, but now you're the man responsible.
And you can make it.
Yeah,
And tell me more about those responsibilities, because you said earlier about you being responsible for the guests, but also responsible for the polar bears and the other the other animals and the environment. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Well, ultimately, your responsibility for safety.
Mhm.
So it is keeping the guests safe in that environment, which, let's not beat around the bush here. It's a really harsh environment. It's not like just walking out of your living room. You're going out into potentially -20. Wind squalls can blow up in an instant. Fog can come down in an instant. And you are in the domain. You're in their domain, the polar bear's domain. That's their house. That's their backyard. And I don't believe we're necessarily on their menu. But as any scavenger or predator will do, if it has an opportunity for a feed, it's going to try it. I'll have a taste of the bite.
Sure.
And of course, a nibble would be fatal. But the responsibility is basically keeping your guests safe, so they have an enjoyable time. They feel safe, but they know that it's sort of on the edge. That sea ice moves, that towards the edge of that cliff where all the birds are nesting, it's a long way down. The snow that we're walking on sometimes you'll disappear up to your waist, because a snow bridge will have broken. And you basically have to give them an element of an adventure and an element of excitement, but keep it as safe as possible. The stewardship role, of course, also extends to the wildlife.
Yes.
So you don't go piling into a walrus colony. You try and move through the environment in such a way that you don't affect the animal's natural behavior. A large angry walrus, they move moderately quickly at times if they really want to. You don't want to be at the end of it. They're
No.
quite big, long
They
tusks.
could do some damage.
They could do some serious damage. and you just don't want to be there. Likewise, you don't want to be responsible for scattering a herd and them causing injuries to each other, as well as fear and problems. So you've got to be very careful around them. Polar bears, you've just got to be careful. And the idea is that you can get your experience, you can have your adventure without disturbing their day-to-day routine. Because for them, they're looking for a seal, although with global warming now, some of them are changing their diet and have learnt to hunt reindeer, which is most incredible thing. A big white bear on a brown background hunting a big white reindeer. It's not by stealth, but
I imagine so.
yeah. So you don't want to interfere with what they're doing. They're going about their daily lives.
Do you think? And we talk about ecotourism, and I guess what you're doing is a form of ecotourism, isn't it? But there are good and bad ecotourism holidays, and it sounds to me as if yours is one of the good ones. You're not interacting, but far and away with the animals, and presumably some of the money goes back into the economy of that local area.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that the governor was very particular about a few years ago was to limit the size of the vessels that visit Svalbard.
Mm-hmm.
So the ship that I was working on last summer had got a guest capacity of 190, which is just the upper limit. And so 190, you could launch probably 10 Zodiacs, and everybody would be able to go on a Zodiac tour or cruise around the ships through the sea ice and stuff like that, or up into one of the fjords, go visit a glacier. Any bigger than that, and you're restricted because the ships can't get in close to the land, and everything would then have to be done by Zodiac. So that's hence the limit. The ships that I do prefer working on, and one of next year's expeditions is on such a ship, is a small ship with only about 12 guests. So it's a very intimate experience, and it's intimate both for the guests and the wildlife, because it means that we will only ever launch 2 Zodiacs, not 10.
Right.
So you'll only have 2 Zodiacs in the water at any one time. And that reduces the impact on say, a polar bear that's having a nap, or a walrus chilling out on an ice floe. Instead of having 10 Zodiacs all flocking towards, there's just 1 or 2. And it's interesting. I mean,
sorry, I was just about to say, there may be people listening to this and think, well, what about the fuel you're using on these Zodiacs? And what about the fuel you're using on these boats? But I think if we put that in some sort of perspective, it's about 1,000 of the fuel used for a week on your Zodiacs, or a week on your little ships. It's about 1,000 of the fuel used for an hour on the big party cruises, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. I think all the ships are self-sufficient. So we're not discharging sewage into the water. That is all self-sufficient. We are making our own water, even on the small boats. We're making our own water. We're responsible for our own heat, and pollution discharges are minimal. So all of the ships they're building some very environmentally friendly ships now. Ultimately, yes, there's a lot of waste that's going to be got rid of various types, food as well as human. But yeah, we're very, very careful about this. And it goes even further, because we will occasionally organize a beach clearance because there's plastics up there. We find plastics. We do a beach landing and we'll find plastic around the beach that's washed up. Yeah. From wherever. Well, yeah, absolutely. From wherever. You find all sorts of things, bottles, bits of fishing net, plastics of all sorts. But again, you have to be very mindful when you clear a beach or you do some of this collection. Yes, you're removing a pollutant from the natural environment, but very often you've got growth and life actively working and living and breeding and developing on those plastics. And so you then take them from the environment and you've probably lost a whole breeding colony of a particular fungi or zooplankton. So
yeah, and I heard recently that there's a new species or subspecies of krill, isn't there, that's adapted to live within and breed on plastics.
Yeah. So you're
Damned if you don't.
you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We're all interconnected, and you just have to be mindful of that.
How was it learning to use the rifle? Because you had to have special training for that, didn't you?
Yes, I went up to the National Rifle Centre in Bisley, and it's very different because did you allude to the wild animal capture stuff?
Yes,
Okay.
you were licensed previously, weren't you, for wild animal capture?
Yeah, I'm licensed. I'm one of the few people in the UK that's licensed for wild animal capture, which in effect is using a dart gun to capture wild animals. So yeah, and before that I'd shot rifles and I shoot archery and things like that. But the course that I went on to enable me to apply for a license from the governor of Svalbard was very, very different. And traditionally you imagine putting the bullet into the chamber and taking a sight and settling yourself down and taking a breath and then squeezing the trigger and letting that shot go. And then you look and see where it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And you take the used cartridge out and you crank another bullet into the chamber.
Sight endpoint. Yeah.
Yes. No. We were shooting. I was shooting a 308 rifle, which will stop any man at 1,000 meters. The target was set at between 50 and 25 meters range, and you are expected under duress because the instructors will yell at you and tell you to move, and you've got to move, and you've got to go to your knees, then you've got to stand, and then you've got to load another bullet, and you're expected to get 5 rounds off within 30 seconds.
Wow.
And they're all expected to hit the target. Yeah. And that's reloading every single one.
Yeah.
And
they're not quick, are they, to reload? There's a bit of effort involved in each.
There's a lot of effort involved. And with somebody shouting at you in a howling gale with rain blowing into your eyes, it's quite a challenge. But the reason for that, and it's exactly the same, I had to do another test when I picked up the rifle to prove that I could handle the rifle. And these rifles are serial numbered and signed to me. So I have one rifle that is dedicated to me, and I am responsible for that rifle and everything to do with it. So when I picked the rifle up, I had to do a test. And whenever we get into port, which is every couple of weeks, we generally try and get up to the range and do practice. And again, it's practice not necessarily of taking your time and hitting the target. It's getting the shots away on target in a very quick time. But of course, the idea is that you never use the rifle. If you are having to deploy lethal force, then you have made several big mistakes in the lead up to that's put you in that position.
So, talk me through the day in the life of a busy Arctic explorer. What do you do? What's your routine? You get up, 10:30, have a leisurely breakfast?
Yeah, that's about it. No, normally on the last ship I was working on, it was up at 6:30. Breathalyzer at 7.
I'm sorry?
Breathalyzer at 7.
I thought you said that. Breathalyzer?
Yep.
So you can't start off with your normal breakfast and Negroni?
Nope, not even a beer.
Interesting. So that is that a legal requirement, or is it just the boat's rules?
I think it was that particular ship, but obviously, if you think about it, do you want somebody that's still suffering from the effects of the night before jumping into a Zodiac with a loaded rifle and tazzing off around the Arctic ice?
No, of course. Yeah.
So
there's me thinking that gets out the early drinkers, but of course, I suppose if you have been drinking the night before, there is a risk, isn't there? Of course.
Yes, very much so. And one of my teammates last year actually blew positive, and he was restricted from working for the day and had a full disciplinary hearing in front of the captain.
Right.
So then quick breakfast, normally ready for action about 8 o'clock, depending on whether we are using the Zodiacs or maybe doing a landing. If we're doing a landing, then we will put ashore probably, what we were doing was putting ashore the 4 gun handlers. And it was our responsibility then to land and scout the whole area that the activities were likely to be going on, making sure that there wasn't a bear asleep hiding behind a rock or anything like that.
Presumably they can be quite tricky to spot.
When they're lying down, hiding, they can be very difficult to spot. But so we make sure everything's clear. Then it's back to the ship. Normally we'll leave 2 or 3 of the guys with guns on shore and ferry the passengers from the ship to the shore for a hike or an explore. Generally back to the ship for 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Quick lunch, maybe move position or work on what we're going to do in the afternoon. 2 o'clock, action again out in the Zodiacs. Back to the ship for about 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening, when the guests then go off to get changed, go and have cocktails or go and meet in the bar. We've got to clean all the kit down, put the rifles, make sure the rifles are cleaned, put them back into the safes, make sure our ammunition's good, make sure all our equipment is good, put the Zodiacs back on board. We will then be preparing or starting to prepare for the next day's activities. 7 o'clock every evening, there was a debrief and a recap for all of the guests that want to be involved in that. So we'll spend about half an hour to 3/4 of an hour going over what we've done during the day, if certain questions have been asked, going into the science behind how a glacier moves, for example. Then it's dinner, and very often you will be invited.
Is the answer to that slowly?
Yes.
Yeah. Also, good. I was thinking of it. Yeah.
The thing is that some of the guys working on the team, one of the guys is a degree level geologist.
Really?
So yeah, absolutely. You know, the guys that make up these teams are not just gung ho characters that want to drive around in fast boats in the ice looking for polar bears, unlike me, of course. These guys are serious scientists, and so they like nothing more than to, tell the guests about their latest research or discovery. And the fact that they're a guide is just their way of reaching out to a wider audience. So then it'll be dinner, and very often you will get an invitation from 1 or 2 guests to have dinner with them. So after recap, we will have a debrief of the day, work through everything that went wrong, everything that went right, what are we going to do, and a short briefing as to what we've got planned for tomorrow, the next day. And then if you are lucky enough to have had a dinner invitation, off up to the restaurant to spend an evening with the guests. And generally I try to knock it on the head about 10 o'clock in the evening, get back to my cabin, pull my courtesy screen across and crash out for the night. Ready to go the next day. Yeah. It's physically and mentally challenging.
I also imagine you prefer doing that to being a guest.
Yeah, I do.
Like me, you have a very low boredom threshold. Like, I probably couldn't be done with having cocktails at 5 every night, but fun on occasion. But I probably want to carry on and strip down a Zodiac and get the next day's mission sorted out.
Yeah, there is all of that, and yes, I do enjoy that very much. I enjoy sharing the Arctic with people who probably otherwise would never see it, and just trying to help them experience what I've experienced over the years and what draws me back time and time again.
Yeah, it's showing them that joy, isn't it? Opening that box for them of jewelry, of exciting things.
Yeah, very much so.
And you say that the other guys on there are serious scientists. Well, you're not far from a serious scientist yourself at times. So, you have a huge amount to offer there. I wonder, how do you balance it though with being the owner of Thames Medical and writing your capnography books and doing capnography lectures? And do you think that there's got to be a steady balance? I can do that much Thames Medical and I can do that much saltboarding, or do you think, wow, let's go. I know the answer, by the way.
Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, of course, it's let's go. But of course, I have a mortgage to pay. And whilst I get paid handsomely for the work I do as a guide, I have responsibilities to my clients or to our clients, and I have responsibility to my team as well. And if I'm going to say anything here, it's going to be a big thank you, particularly to Ashley, who keeps the show running when I'm out of radio and internet contact. And we keep things running. I get into port probably once a week. We've got no internet up there because all the satellites are sitting around the equator, and we are right at the top.
Oh, I guess there would be, wouldn't there? I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to get no point in taking us.
No, not at all. So when we get internet, that's in main town of Longyearbyen. And the satellite transmitters are pointing flat down to the horizon.
Wow.
Whereas when, even in the UK, our satellite pickups are angled up into the sky, but up in the high Arctic, you're aiming down at the horizon.
That's amazing. So, gosh, the scatter there must be huge, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, that's a precious resource. So I can get internet when I get into harbour, and then depending on whether I've got shore leave or whether I've got other duties, I can generally log on and communicate with Ashley. And if there are any things that he can't answer, then I'll be able to step in and help him out.
Yeah.
But
you'd really struggle to watch a Disney Plus film there, wouldn't you?
unless you download it first.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah. No, that's good. You could do that. I was thinking I'd never get my daughters to go with.
Yeah.
Wait, is there any advice that you give to someone wanting to okay, first of all, go on one of these holidays, or secondly, someone who's thinking they might want to become a guide?
You don't want to become a guide. The more
That's good
guides
advice.
there are,
End
the
with that
harder.
one.
Well, the more guides there are, the harder it is for me to get a job. So,
Okay,
because I work
good.
I work as a freelance guide. Some of the guides are tied to various shipping companies, but I'm a free agent, so I will pick up work wherever I can and whenever I can.
Yeah.
But if you fancy being a guide, yeah, go for it. Yeah. So my other advice is if you want to experience the Arctic, come and join me. I'm going to be working on one of the small ships next year. I've got dates in June. There is some availability, and you can sign up and come and join us. And I'll be working with one of the Arctic's most experienced guides and also one of the world's top wildlife photographers. So if between the three of us, we can't give you the experience of a lifetime, I don't know who can.
So will you give us the link?
Yeah, we can put the link in down below. Absolutely. No problem at all. Or you can pick up through Instagram, Mike Brampton, or Facebook at Mike Brampton, or drop us an email via the links below. Yeah, no problem at all.
Because I think a few people would be interested in going there. And what about people who may be interested in looking at photos? Do you have any plans to sell your photos, show them? Is there a book? Is there a website or a shop? Where can we get your photos, Mike? Because they are fantastic.
Thank you.
Really.
It's very sweet of you to say so. MikeBrampton.com is due online very soon. I am putting a book together. In fact, I'm putting two books together. One is a children's book from an encounter that I had last year with a mother and two freshly born cubs. And we were really privileged to spend a long time with her. She knew we were there, but she wasn't bothered. And through the rain, we actually got rain that day. I remember rain, a little bit of snow, but she brought the two cubs to show the cubs, the humans in the big boat. And we basically stayed parked in the ice and just watched her watch her feeding the cubs and the cubs playing. Privileged position to be in. So that's going into a children's book. And then there's a more adult book.
Do you have a name for the book yet? Children's book?
No, I'm
Okay.
going to publish it. We're putting it, we're putting it together, and it will be published. And again, that will go out. That'll be put out on Facebook, Mike Brampton, and Instagram at Mike Brampton. So,
And the adult book?
the adult book will follow, and that will be more of a look at the Arctic. Not all positive, not all pretty fluffy bears. There is a harsh side to the Arctic. It is raw nature, and not all bears make it. And there are a couple of stories in that book of bear encounters that we've had with bears that didn't make it, sadly, for various reasons. But yeah, the walruses and the other sea life, the whales that we've seen, it's all in there.
Amazing. And yet it is sad that they don't all make it. Of course, in nature, everything dies at some stage, but the awful thought is that a lot of the bears don't make it because of things we've done, direct or indirect. And that's the terrifying thought, isn't it? That we are destroying some of their feeding grounds. We're reducing the biodiversity that supports the environment that supports them.
Very much so. I think I find it very frustrating that this year in particular, there is lots of press and publicity of a cruise ship at the North Pole. The Russians are driving icebreakers through the famous northwest-northeast passages, delivering oil. So they're putting oil tankers through the environment.
Well, the good thing is they're so robust, they never, ever, ever break and leak oil. So that's
Yeah. I think the first one I ever remember was the Torrey Canyon.
well, the front fell off that one, certainly, by all means, but
Yeah.
the rest usually stay reasonably intact.
Yeah. And the Exxon Valdez, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the back one fell off that and it caught on fire, but the others are very, very safe. Very safe.
It's worrying. It's
It really
worrying.
is.
And certainly the last 3 years that I've been, the sea ice has retreated northwards a week earlier each week. So I've been there through May and June, and very often, or certainly back in the day, in June, you would not be able to circumnavigate the island of Svalbard. This year, we were able to do it without too much difficulty at all. And that's progressive. Year on year, the sea ice is going north a week earlier every year. But the problem with that is that, okay, some bears are okay living on land for a while. But if you're a bear who is dedicated to eating seals on sea ice, and you don't get onto the sea ice when it melts and moves away from the land, you're stuck on land.
And the seals aren't. Yeah.
And the seals aren't. They will go with the ice regardless. And of course, what that then means is that you've got to find a different dinner.
And the little dinner is little pink things. People or nothing.
Little pink things or reindeer.
Or reindeer. Yeah.
But of course, that then puts stress on the reindeer herds. And that all percolates down. It's a difficult one. It's very difficult, I think. And of course, visiting there, I am sure there are some listeners who are going, but you're there, you're contributing to this. And that's something that weighs very heavy on me. At the moment, I feel that I have more to offer by documenting what is happening in an attempt, futile potentially as it is, to make people aware and for people to make changes. And there will come a time, and it won't be very long, where I feel that my impact on the environment is greater than the benefit that I can get or give from documenting the situation. And there are a lot of guides up there. There are a lot of guys that I know that feel the same way. At the moment, we feel we're on the cusp.
Yeah. We mentioned earlier that ecotourism has a role to play in providing money for those areas to help reduce environmental contamination, to enrich the environment for the animals, to do anything they can to try and reduce the impact that the rest of the world has on that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think your impact is very small. It worries me that these big cruise ships are going to turn up and their impact will be huge, and the Russian oil tankers' impact will be huge. And so, it's difficult to tell, isn't it? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong? We should maybe all stay at home looking at your photos by candlelight, and maybe we should.
It's a difficult balance, and I don't know the answer. It's not an easy question, and it's not an easy answer. I think that the way things are going, certainly from Svalbard perspective, that the experiences that I've had over the last 10 years will become rarer.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that limits it to a privileged few who've got the money to spend to enable them to do that, and that's a whole different debate.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. But I think that the governor from Svalbard takes his responsibilities to his environment incredibly seriously. And whether certainly they've restricted the size of cruise ships. That's a done deal. That's happened.
Good.
Whether he restricts the number of visitors, that's currently being talked about. There is discussion at the moment that ecotourists shouldn't be allowed within 500 meters of a bear, for example, or wildlife. And whilst I understand that would kill that particular industry, and that would withdraw,
unless they have cameras with
a lot of support for the local area.
Yeah,
that's a difficult equation. That's a difficult balancing act. There is a drive from the scientists who monitor the bears and the walrus to keep us away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's also a backlash or a drive from people like myself. So I'm in touch with the Polar Research Institute, and I've got friends that work for them. We get experiences and we can track the bears just as easily as they can with less impact.
Is that right? Interesting.
Well, one of the things that the scientists rely on are radio collars. So you don't leave a radio collar on the snow with a big sign saying, "Hello, polar bear, please put this round your neck so we can track your whereabouts."
No, you have to anesthetize them, don't you? Or
You do indeed. Yeah, they have to be knocked down, full sedative, full anaesthetic, and then the collar is clamped around their neck. And
unlike a dog or cat, you can't do a pre-anaesthetic check, can you, to make sure that all is well with these animals?
When you do your pre-anaesthetic check from a helicopter?
Bloods?
Nah, no bloods. But one thing you can certainly guarantee is that there is a danger of overheating, and there is also a danger of a large dose of adrenaline interacting with the drugs that you give them. So it's an interesting debate. And as I say, I'm in touch with the Polar Institute and we talk back and forth periodically. And there are things that I'm hoping that we can get through, because a small boat with half a dozen people on or 12 people on, just gently pottering past a walrus on an ice floe who doesn't bat an eyelid, is significantly less disturbing than either a large ship or a helicopter coming in to have a look and see what's going on.
It seems to be a pretty low impact.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's there's a drive. It's responsible tourism is the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
I think.
Of course.
Yeah.
Look, we're gonna chat a bit more in just a moment, but I wanted, while we've got a bit of internet signal here, because we're going to avoid the evening. I wanted to show you a certificate I made for you.
I haven't done a 60-second CPD, have I?
You haven't. I don't know if you're going to or not. But I thought, I don't care if you do or not, because actually what you're giving me tonight is a tremendous oversight into your life as an Arctic photographer, explorer, mentor, demonstrator. But you're also a skier, a cycler, a rifleman, an oximeter, a capnographer, and a damn good egg. So I'm trying to encapsulate that in this little certificate. And it says, certificate of being bloody brilliant, whatever you do. So, and there's a couple of anesthetics monitors. There's a polar bear about to attack two small children. That's a fantastic one, so we're okay there. There's a cyclist. Now I'm not telling you who it is, but you can tell by the little kiddies bike on the end that it's probably not a speed cyclist.
I think the red rucksack and the yellow jumper gives that away.
Yes, me. Okay, fair enough. There's me doing some clay pigeon shooting.
Right.
They move a little quicker than polar bears, but they're safer unless they hit you. And there's some skiing going on. But it's a bit of a cheers to you, Mike, for actually excelling in whatever you set your heart to do. And
Thank you.
Just over a year ago, when we did the RIB,
The powerboat
driving,
course. Yeah.
powerboat course, when you said, I hate this, no problem. Yeah. I didn't ever want to go on the water. My mate forced me to do it. I think I would have thought that a year from then, you'd be leading people into one of the most hostile territories in the natural world, and showing them the sheer excitement and wonder of polar bears, of walruses, of skuas, of sea ice, of glaciers having baby calves, all those things. So cheers to you, Mike, for that. Thank you.
Well, cheers to you, because it was you that suggested that we should go on this jolly thing and take our exams and learn how to handle these peculiar little fast-moving boats in incredibly dangerous waters, because the Isle of Wight is not an easy place.
It's not.
And it was then a combination of events and a couple of fabulous people who suggested that I should maybe I should look at this a little bit more seriously. And hey, guess what? I've already got one of the major qualifications that I need, which was the one that you made me do.
Happy to be a tiny part in your progression there. Where next? Where next for Mike? Is it moon exploration? What?
I think I'm too old to become an astronaut, Julian. Too old and fat. Where next? That's a great question. Certainly already in the diary is an expedition next June, up and around Svalbard on a lovely little ship called Freya. There'll be 12 guests, 3 guides. So that's a really intimate look at Svalbard for 10 days. So that one's booked already. I'm talking with another ship operator to go back up there for 6 weeks before that expedition to basically do what I was doing last year. Now on the books, there's a possibility of Antarctica.
I was just about to ask. What next? Antarctica? When?
Building up towards Christmas, if it happens. I honestly don't know. Of course, there's no requirement for a gun handler there. So
there being, of course, no bears, because it's the Antarctic.
That's right. I'll tell you another interesting thing, that the Antarctic, of course, is a landmass covered in ice, surrounded by sea, whereas the Arctic is all ice, surrounded by sea.
So if you tilt the pole deep enough into the North Pole, it just goes straight through into the water.
Yeah. Well, cruise ship actually went up there this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the North Pole's moved quite a bit, hasn't it? In fact, which North Pole? Because I think there are 3, aren't there?
I think there are, but for sake of argument, North Pole's the North Pole. And I mean, it's depressing to think that, when was it, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Top Gear drove to the North Pole?
Yeah. Was their fault. Bloody
There we go.
Clarkson.
Bloody Clarkson. But yeah, they were able to drive a ordinary cruise ship up to the North Pole this year. And there was a polar bear encounter there as well.
Was there really?
Yeah.
Well, long may they be. Polar bears at the polar.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
So, well, I think, although I have spoken to you for years, and I can carry on, we'll carry on speaking to you for years. I don't know whether we should call things a night now, where we've got that moment of working internet, where we can say, as you usually do, that if you've enjoyed tonight's show, then please press subscribe on that little button at the bottom of the screen, because it really, really helps. We do relish all you listeners writing into us, and carry on writing in, carry on watching, carry on viewing. And if you have any questions about polar bears, about photography, about anything, ask Mike. If you have any questions, then you might ask me and I'll pass it on to someone else. But thank you for joining us, Mike Brampton. And a little more to say other than, may your dog go with you.
Thank you very much, Julian. May your dog go with you. Cheers.
Cheers.